So Roblox's collection service allows you to create groups of instances that you can, for example, reference through scripting with only using one function. And thanks to that, you don't have to reference every single instance manually, which is pretty handy. And with collection service, you are even able to keep track of instances that are getting added or removed to the collection, but I'm going to overview it more in this tutorial. So as usual, leave a like and subscribe to support the channel, and let's get into the video. So let's just imagine that we have this part right here, and adding a tag to this part is as simple as just going down to the properties, and down on the bottom we have the tags tab. And we can add a tag right here by pressing on this plus button, then just type in the name of the tag, and just press on the create tag. But then there is also another option, since if you have a lot of parts, it will be kind of mandatory to go through all of them and just add the tag, and that option is the tag editor, which I can enable by going to the view and press on the tag editor. And don't mind Roblox's docking system, but I'm basically just going to place it right here. So again, right here we have a tag that we can create, and I'm just going to name this one part tag. And if I wanted to add this tag to all of these parts, I would simply select all of them and just press on this checkbox right here, which is going to say apply this tag to all selected instances. And I'm just going to do that. And now all of them are going to have the part tag under the properties. And under this window we can even search for the tag, or maybe search for something that's even non-existent. And a really neat thing with the tag editor is the option to select the word view, which is going to highlight all of the instances with a tag. And now you even have this button right here, which, if I press, is going to create a group that we can even rename to, for example, a part group. And now if I were to double click on the tag, I can rename this one to, for example, part tag 1. And if I go to all of the instances with the part tag, you can see that it changed the name of the tag right here. And now under the word view again, we are able to hide the view from the instances with the tag or even the whole group. And lastly, we can delete the tag or even the group, but I'm just going to add the tag again. And if it comes to scripting with collection service, I would first need to add a script somewhere, like for example the server script service. And I'm just going to name this one tag manager and just move it to the side. But now I'm just going to make a variable that's going to be the tag name, which is just the part tag. And you need to make sure that this string right here is the same as the name of the tag. But now let's make a reference to the collection service, which you get like any other service by doing game then the get service method and the collection service. Make sure that you are not getting the controller service, because well, thanks to my editing magic, you can probably guess what happened. But anyways, right now I'm just going to make a local function, which is going to be called change collection part color, which I'm also going to call whenever the script runs. But now to get all of these parts from the collection, I can simply just use a collection service method, which is collection service, and the get tagged. And now we can see that this function is expecting a tag string, which we have right here, and then it returns a table with instances. So I'm just going to give it the tag name and simply just print out the parts. And this is supposed to be parts, but anyways. And now if I do a run test, you can see that we have a table right here with all of these parts in the workspace. And previously I would probably have to make a folder, then just put all of these parts there, and it would probably just look something like this, which is in my opinion fine, but you can also imagine that you can, for example, have something else inside of this folder that you maybe didn't really want to, make a reference to. So if you wanted to, for example, loop through the parts, you would basically just have to check if the type of the part is equal to a part, then do whatever, which again wouldn't be too much work, but then you can imagine that you have different parts which are not going to have the tag, and you also don't want to modify them, and now you'd have to make a different folder for all of them. And you basically just get the idea at this point, right? But anyways, I'm just going to make another for loop to loop through all of these instances that have this tag. And also this is supposed to be a part, and again this is for type checking, so you don't really have to do that. Same with this one right here. But anyways, right now I'm just going to change the color of the part to be, for example, maybe red, where now if I do a run test, it's going to change the color of all of these parts. So overall this would be the most simple use case, but there is also a lot of different stuff that you can do with collection service. One of them would be, like I said in the intro, to keep track of instances that are getting added to the collection or even removed from it, which is done by using the collection service, then the get instance added signal, which is expecting a tag, and it returns a signal that fires when a given tag is added to an object. So in this case it's going to be the tag name, and then I can connect a function which actually gets the instance that was added. So now if I were to print out the added instance, and for example did a run test, and just duplicated this part, you can see that this printed out a part, and if I deselect it, then press on the print, it's going to select this part right here, and that's because it has the part tag. But now if I were to remove this tag, and for example just change the color of the part to be white, if I were to duplicate it now, it wouldn't fire the signal again, and that's because the instance doesn't have the tag anymore. But if I were to add the tag now to this part, you can see that this printed the part again. And now there comes a question. What if I wanted to change the color of the part that I just added the tag to? And that's again very simple. So imagine that I'm going to make a local function called makeRed, and this one is going to expect a part. Where now I can do if part, then, meaning that we basically just provided the argument to the function, I can simply copy this line of code, place it right here, and just copy the function name, and call it from in here. And now make sure that the name of the argument is the same as the argument in the for loop. For example, I can simply just change this one to part from loop, but it's basically just going to pass in the part from the parts collection. And now this time, whenever the part gets added, I can again simply call the function, and this time provide the instance. So if I were to do a run test now, you can see that it made all of these parts red. And now if I were to add an instance, which is going to be the part, and just go down to the properties and to the tags tab, and just add the part tag, you can see that it again made it red. So that's on the end of keeping the track of instances getting added to the collection, but I should also make an example of the instances basically getting removed. And this time, I will need to use another method, which is going to be called getInstanceRemovedSignal. And instead of making the part red again, I'm just going to change it to green. Where if I, for example, select this one and simply just remove the tag, you are able to see that it's green now. And now I'm also going to go to the documentation later and present you every single method and event from the collection service, but speaking about events, I'm going to be using one of them for an example, and that event is called tagAdded, which I'm going to connect a function to. And this function is expecting the tag that was added, so I'm just going to do this. And right now I'm just going to print out the tag, where again, if I were to select a part, and simply just create a new tag, and this one I'm just going to call whatever, is basically just going to print out the tag. And the same thing would go for the tag removed signal as well. And I just thought that before I go to the documentation, I should probably present two different things. One of them is going to be how to add a tag to a part through scripting, and the other one, well, I'm going to just talk about in a minute. And maybe before the documentation, I'm actually just going to show something that's kind of important, which would be, for example, how to add a tag to a part through scripting. And again, this is going to be really simple. I would first need to make a reference to the ball, which is just the workspace then ball, and just use the add tag method. And for example, the tag is going to be again the tag name, which is the part tag from right here. And right now in Studio, this part doesn't have the part tag, but if I were to do a playtest, you can see that all of a sudden this part is red, and it has the part tag right here, which I can again remove or add manually. And the other thing that I wanted to show would basically be the replication, where if I, for example, just were to do a playtest, even on the client these parts are going to be red, and if I, for example, just go to one of them, you can see that it has a part tag, which basically means that the tags replicate to the clients automatically. So I can just add another script in, for example, the starter player scripts. And this one is going to be called tag manager local. And everything is going to work the same as in the script, where if I, for example, just disable this one and copy everything, then just paste it in, and for now I'm just going to comment some of the stuff out, like the instance added signals, because I want to showcase something with the change part color, where if I do a playtest, this then really changed the color of these parts. And you might be thinking why that is, since this was working on the server, right? And all of these parts have the part tag. But something that I didn't say is that the client didn't have the time to replicate the tag getting added to these parts. But if I simply just print out the parts right now, this table is going to be empty, but if I were to, for example, wait 5 seconds, then just do another playtest, you can see that everything seems to be working. But please don't do the task wait 5 seconds in a script, because the collection service, then the get instance added signal, is there for a reason. But basically, most of the time this method is going to be used on the client, because if I were to do another playtest, and I forgot to comment out this line, but anyways, you can see that everything is working properly. And that's because this function had no parts, but the script made the connection on the getInstanceAddedSignal with the tag name before all of these were replicated to the client. So this method right here is actually what ran the function. And the error is right here, because the ball didn't get replicated again, so I would need to use wait for child, and then the ball. And also the thing with the collection service and the tag added is that on the server, this tag was already existing, and it didn't print out the tag in the collection service then the tag added signal, but it did on the client. And again, this is because of the time it took to replicate. But that's everything I wanted to cover for the collection service, and let's lastly move into the documentation, where again you are going to have notes on what the collection service is and the main purpose, as well as the notes about replication. And something that I didn't mention is that when tags replicate, all tags on the object replicate at the same time. But yeah, now you have all of these methods, where again we cover some of them, but different stuff that you can do is, for example, to get all the tags from the collection service, then the get instance removed signal, the get tags, to only get all of the tags from a specified object, and a method on hashtags, which returns whenever a given object has a tag. And you can also remove the tag through scripting, and lastly there is the tag added and the tag removed signal. But most of this stuff is pretty self-explanatory, and I'm going to leave a link to the documentation down in the description. But yeah, that's basically going to be everything for today, so again go check out my Patreon page and leave a like and subscribe to support the channel. But thank you all for watching, hope everyone had a nice day, and see you guys